Welcome back to What's in the Bible, a first-timer's journey. I'm so glad you're here. Every day we're walking through the Bible together, and I have to say, it's been an eye-opening, confusing, challenging, and honestly, really fascinating adventure. I'm not here as a preacher or a teacher. I'm just someone who's finally reading the Bible with fresh eyes, asking real questions, and trying to understand it piece by piece. So if you've ever felt like the Bible is hard to get through or like you're the only one with a million questions, trust me, you're not alone. Let's keep going. Genesis 8:1 through 10:32. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and livestock with him in the boat. He sent a wind to blow across the earth, and the floodwaters began to recede. The underground waters stopped flowing, and the torrential rains from the sky were stopped. So the floodwaters gradually receded from the earth. After 150 days, exactly 5 months from the time the flood began, the boat came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. 2.5 months later, as the waters continued to go down, other mountain peaks became visible. After another 40 days, Noah opened the window he had made in the boat and released a raven. The bird flew back and forth until the floodwaters on the earth had dried up. He also released a dove to see if the water had receded and it could find dry ground. But the dove could find no place to land because the water still covered the ground. So it returned to the boat, and Noah held out his hand and drew the dove back inside. After waiting another 7 days, Noah released the dove again. This time the dove returned to him in the evening with a fresh olive leaf in its beak. Then Noah knew that the floodwaters were almost gone. He waited another 7 days and then released the dove again. This time, it did not come back. Noah was now 601 years old. On the first day of the new year, 10.5 months after the flood began, the floodwaters had almost dried up from the earth. Noah lifted back the covering of the boat and saw that the surface of the ground was drying. 2 more months went by, and at last the earth was dry. Then God said to Noah, "Leave the boat, all of you, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Release all the animals, the birds, the livestock, and the small animals that scurry along the ground, so they can be fruitful and multiply throughout the earth." So Noah, his wife, and his sons and their wives left the boat. And all of the large and small animals and birds came out of the boat pair by pair. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and there he sacrificed as burnt offerings the animals and birds that had been approved for that purpose. And the Lord was pleased with the aroma of the sacrifice and said to himself, "I will never again curse the ground because of the human race. Even though everything they think or imagine is bent toward evil from childhood, I will never again destroy all living things. As long as the earth remains, there will be planting and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night." Then God blessed Noah and his sons and told them, "Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth. All the animals of the earth, all the birds of the sky, all the small animals that scurry along the ground, and all the fish in the sea will look on you with fear and terror. I have placed them in your power. I have given them to you for food, just as I have given you grain and vegetables. But you must never eat any meat that still has the lifeblood in it. And I will require the blood of anyone who takes another person's life. If a wild animal kills a person, it must die. And anyone who murders a fellow human must die. If anyone takes a human life, that person's life will also be taken by human hands. For God made human beings in his own image. Now be fruitful and multiply and repopulate the earth." Then God told Noah and his sons, "I hereby confirm my covenant with you and your descendants, and with all the animals that were on the boat with you, the birds, the livestock, and all the wild animals, every living creature on earth. Yes, I am confirming my covenant with you. Never again will floodwaters kill all living creatures. Never again will a flood destroy the earth." Then God said, "I am giving you a sign of my covenant with you and with all living creatures for all generations to come. I have placed my rainbow in the clouds. It is the sign of my covenant with you and with all the earth. When I send clouds over the earth, the rainbow will appear in the clouds. I will remember my covenant with you and with all living creatures. Never again will the floodwaters destroy all life. When I see the rainbow in the clouds, I will remember the eternal covenant between God and every living creature on earth. Then God said to Noah, "Yes, this rainbow is the sign of the covenant I am confirming with all the creatures on earth." The sons of Noah who came out of the boat with their father were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham is the father of Canaan. From these three sons of Noah came all the people who now populate the earth. After the flood, Noah began to cultivate the ground, and he planted a vineyard. One day he drank some wine he had made, and he became drunk and lay naked inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw that his father was naked, and went outside and told his brothers. Then Shem and Japheth took a robe, held it over their shoulders, and backed into the tent to cover their father. As they did this, they looked the other way so they would not see him naked. When Noah woke up from his stupor, he learned what Ham, his youngest son, had done. Then he cursed Canaan, the son of Ham. "May Canaan be cursed. May he be the lowest of servants to his relatives." Then Noah said, "May the Lord, the God of Shem, be blessed, and may Canaan be his servant. May God expand the territory of Japheth. May Japheth share the prosperity of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant." Noah lived another 350 years after the great flood. He lived 950 years, and then he died. This is the account of the families of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the three sons of Noah. Many children were born to them after the great flood. The descendants of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tyrus. The descendants of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Rephath, and Togarmah. The descendants of Javan were Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Rodanim. Their descendants became the seafaring peoples that spread out to various lands, each identified by its own language, clan, and national identity. The descendants of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. The descendants of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Ramah, and Sabteca. The descendants of Ramah were Sheba and Dedan. Cush was also the ancestor of Nimrod, who was the first heroic warrior on earth. Since he was the greatest hunter in the world, his name became proverbial. People would say, "This man is like Nimrod, the greatest hunter in the world." He built his kingdom in the land of Babylonia, and the cities of Babylon, Erech, Ekkad, and Calneh. From there he expanded his territory to Assyria, building the cities of Nineveh, Rehoboth, Calah, and Resen, the great city located between Nineveh and Calah. Mizraim was the ancestor of the Ludites, Enamites, Lahabites, Naphtuhites, Pathrasites, Casluhites, and the Caphtorites, from whom the Philistines came. Canaan's oldest son was Sidon, the ancestor of the Sidonians. Canaan was also the ancestor of the Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites, Girgashites, Hivites, Archites, Sinites, Arvadites, Zemarites, and Hamathites. The Canaanite clan eventually spread out, and the territory of Canaan extended from Sidon in the north of Gerar and Gaza, or Gerar and Gaza, in the south and east as far as Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim near Lasha. These were the descendants of Ham, identified by clan, language, territory, and national identity. Sons were also born to Shem, the older brother of Japheth. Shem was the ancestor of all the descendants of Eber. The descendants of Shem were Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. The descendants of Aram were Uz, Hul, Gether, and Mash. Arphaxad was the father of Shelah, and Shelah was the father of Eber. Eber had two sons. The first was named Peleg, which means division, for during his lifetime the people of the world were divided into different language groups. His brother's name was Joktan. Joktan was the ancestor of Almodad, Shaleth, Hazarmaveth, Jerah, Hadoram, Uzal, Diklah, Obal, Ibamal, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jabab. All these were descendants of Joktan. The territory that occupied extended from Mesha all the way to Sephar in the eastern mountains. These were the descendants of Shem, identified by clan, language, territory, and national identity. These are the clans that descended from Noah's sons, arranged by nation according to their lines of descent. All the nations of the earth descended from the clans after the great flood. I must say, honestly, I can't wait till we get to the point where we no longer have to say names of long generations of families. It's not easy. Matthew 4:12 through 25. When Jesus heard that John had been arrested, he left Judea and returned to Galilee. He went first to Nazareth, then left there and moved to Capernaum, beside the Sea of Galilee in the region of Zebulun and Naphtali. This fulfilled what God said through the prophet Isaiah. In the land of Zebulun and of Naphtali, beside the sea, beyond the Jordan River, in Galilee, where so many Gentiles live, the people who sat in darkness have seen a great light, and for those who lived in the land where death casts its shadow, a light has shined. From then on, Jesus began to preach, "Follow me, I will show you how to fish for people." And they left their nets at once and followed him. A little farther up the shore, he saw two brothers, James and John, sitting in a boat with their father Zebedee, repairing their nets. And he called them to come too. They immediately followed him, leaving the boat and their father behind. Jesus traveled throughout the region of Galilee, teaching in the synagogues and announcing the good news about the kingdom. And he healed every kind of disease and illness. News about him spread as far as Syria, and people soon began to bring him all who were sick, and whatever their sickness or disease, or if they were demon-possessed or epileptic or paralyzed, he healed them all. Large crowds followed him wherever he went. People from Galilee, the 10 towns, Jerusalem, from all over Judea, and from east of the Jordan River. Psalm 4, 1 through 8. Answer me when I call to you, O God who declares me innocent. Free me from my troubles. Have mercy on me and hear my prayer. How long will you people ruin my reputation? How long will you make groundless accusations? How long will you continue your lies? You can be sure of this. The Lord set apart the godly for himself. The Lord will answer when I call to him. Don't sin by letting anger control you. Think about it overnight and remain silent. Offer sacrifices in the right spirit and trust the Lord. Many people say, "Who will show us better times? Let your face smile on us, Lord. You have given me greater joy than those who have abundant harvests of grain and new wine. In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, will keep me safe." Proverbs 1:20 through 23. Wisdom shouts in the streets. She cries out in the public square. She calls to the crowd along the main street, to those gathered in front of the city gate. How long, you simpletons, will you insist on being simple-minded? How long will you mockers relish your mocking? How long will you fools hate knowledge? Come and listen to my counsel. I'll share my heart with you and make you wise. And here is a summary of today's readings. Genesis 8 through 10, the world after the flood. God remembers Noah and causes the floodwaters to recede. Noah sends out a raven and then a dove to find dry land. Eventually, the dove returns with an olive leaf. God tells Noah to leave the ark. Noah builds an altar and offers a burnt sacrifice. God responds with a promise. Never again will he destroy the earth with a flood. He sets the rainbow as a symbol of his everlasting covenant. God gives Noah and his family permission to eat meat, but says they must not consume blood. We also see God's declaration of the value of human life. He institutes capital punishment for murder. In a later scene, Noah becomes drunk and lies naked. Ham dishonors him, and Noah curses Ham's son Canaan, but blesses Shem and Japheth. Chapter 10 outlines the genealogy of Noah's sons and how the nations spread across the earth. Matthew 4:12 through 25. Jesus begins his public ministry. Jesus moves to Galilee after John the Baptist is arrested and begins preaching. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven has come near. He calls his first disciples, Peter and Andrew, James and John, ordinary fishermen who leave everything to follow him. Jesus begins healing people, casting out demons, and teaching in synagogues, drawing large crowds from all over. Psalm 4, a prayer for peace and protection. David cries out to God, confident that God hears him. He warns others not to chase lies or empty things and encourages trust in the Lord. He expresses peaceful sleep because of the security and joy God gives him, even amid distress. Proverbs 1:20 through 23. Wisdom is calling. Wisdom is pictured as a woman shouting in public places, inviting the simple and foolish to learn. She offers insight and wisdom, but warns that those who refuse her will regret ignoring her voice. Okay, so after reading today's passages, I had a ton of questions, and I want to be upfront about something. Some of these questions might not seem super spiritual or necessary in terms of faith, but they're just the things that popped into my head as I was reading. This is how my brain works. I'm not trying to overanalyze or cast doubt. This is just me trying to understand what I'm reading. So if you've ever felt weird about having questions like these, don't. You're in a good company. Let's go through them together. So, of course, in our first reading in Genesis, it talks about eating meat, which I discussed earlier on when I had questions about whether or not we were supposed to be vegetarians, and then why did we start eating meat? So what does it mean when it says not to eat meat with its lifeblood still in it? Are we talking about not eating anything from an animal while it's still alive? Do we not drink its blood? How does that affect how we eat meat today? Because I know I like my steak rare. So what does that mean? So here's the deal. In the Bible, blood is seen as sacred. It represents life itself. Leviticus 17:11 says, "For the life of a creature is in the blood." So when God told Noah not to eat meat with blood still in it, he was laying down a principle, respect for life even when taking life to eat. So this likely means, 1, don't take meat from an animal while it's still alive, a practice in some ancient pagan rituals. And 2, don't consume blood directly. Drain it first. That became a major part of Jewish dietary law, seen in Leviticus 17 and Deuteronomy 12:23 through 24. And even in the New Testament, believers were encouraged to avoid blood. It's in Acts 15:20. It's about approaching food and life with reverence. We need to be respectful. So, right after that, God says he'll require the life of anyone who takes a human life, including animals. And I had to ask, why would an animal be put to death for doing something instinctual? Animals don't have a sense of right and wrong. And most oftentimes, an animal is going to respond that way out of fear for itself. It's just an instinct. So yes, animals don't operate with a moral compass like we do. But this command in Genesis 9:5 through 6 isn't about moral guilt. It's about how sacred human life is. Here's the idea. God is saying human life is so valuable that anyone or anything that takes it, human or animal, must be dealt with. It reinforces a core biblical truth. People are made in God's image, Genesis 1:27, and that gives human life a unique status. Plus, there are practical reasons. A wild animal that kills a human might be a threat to others. Putting it down was a way to protect the community. And just to be clear, this was carried out by people, not God raining down fire on bears. But that led me with a follow-up question of what if people never catch the animal that might have killed a human? For instance, if it's a shark out in the ocean, then what? How are we going to know which shark? In that case, humans wouldn't be responsible, but God still is. He's sovereign over all creation. Whether that shark gets eaten, starves, or lives out its life peacefully, that's in his hands. The bigger point here is that God values human life, and this was a way to make sure that message comes across clearly in ancient times. So this led me to another question as I was thinking about all of this animal stuff. Why does God even want animal sacrifices? He created these creatures. Why is he asking for them to be killed, and why did he eventually stop asking for them? Here's why it existed. 1, to deal with sin. Sin separates people from God. Blood symbolizes life, so sacrificing an animal showed the cost of sin. Leviticus 17:11. 2, to show repentance. people brought sacrifices to express sorrow for sin and devotion to God. And 3, to foreshadow Jesus. The whole system pointed forward to Christ, the Lamb of God, John 1:29. His death fulfilled the whole purpose of sacrifice once and for all, Hebrews 10:1-10. After Jesus, no more animal sacrifices were needed. His sacrifice was complete, final, and perfect. That's why we worship now through faith, not through offering burnt offerings. All right, so now let's get into my questions about Noah and what he did after they got to land. So Noah gets drunk off wine he made, passes out naked in his tent. Ham sees him, tells his brothers, and then Noah wakes up and curses Ham's son Canaan. I mean, what? Ham didn't even do anything that bad. Why is Noah blaming Ham and especially Canaan for this? I feel like Noah did something silly and then perhaps was embarrassed by it and laid blame on someone else instead of taking responsibility for his own actions. Then he went and cursed them. It's like, why would he curse them? So why the curse? There are a few theories. Ham might have mocked Noah instead of helping or respecting him. Noah could have been reacting out of shame or defensiveness and lashed out at Canaan to make a point. Some scholars say this story is also meant to set the stage for the future. The Canaanites, descendants of Canaan, become enemies of Israel, so this story explains why they were seen as cursed. But yes, it does seem like Noah is shifting the blame. It feels like a case of someone messing up, not owning it, and then making someone else carry the burden. And the part that really bothers me is, first of all, of course, technically, Noah can't curse another person. He does not have the power to do that. But he can treat them incredibly poorly. And in treating them like that, for instance, if he's treating Canaan like he's worthless, then Canaan is going to feel like he's worthless. Therefore, he's going to act worthless. I feel like this is almost a self-fulfilling prophecy created by Noah because of his own actions and not taking responsibility for them. This part really bothered me. This is the first part of my Bible readings that kind of made me mad because I didn't like that this is how this went down. I thought it was irresponsible of Noah to be this way. All right, so next question. And this question is just something I kind of thought about. I've thought about it before, and since this was in this reading, I figured I'd bring it up now. Before the flood, there was no rain. So after the flood, when it started raining again, Noah and his family must have been freaking out. Like, oh no, is it happening again? And then at some point they saw snow and probably went, what even is this frozen sky water? Since the only time that these people ever saw rain was when it completely destroyed the entire earth. So in Genesis 2:5-6, says the earth was watered by mist before the flood. So when Noah warned people about rain, they had no idea what he was talking about. After the flood, rain became a regular part of life. But imagine how traumatic that must have been the first few times. Noah's whole family probably had flood flashbacks every time the sky got dark. And yes, snow eventually became part of life too. Genesis 8:22 mentions cold and heat, summer and winter. Seeing frozen water fall from the sky would have been wild for them, I think. I could imagine. It's a reminder that even as the world restarts, things change, and God walks us through the unknown. Okay, so this is one of the questions that really has nothing to do with faith or spirituality of any sort. It just, reading this name made me think of this from when I was a kid. So I remember back in the 80s when I was a kid, sometimes I would hear people use the term Nimrod towards other people, meaning that they were dumb. But in the Bible, Nimrod is a mighty warrior and leader of Babylon. So is that where the insult came from? Because Babylon eventually went downhill? Because if Nimrod is a great and mighty warrior and leader, why would you refer to someone who's dumb as Nimrod? So yes, Nimrod was a powerful guy in the Bible. Genesis 10:8-10 says he was a mighty hunter before the Lord and helped build cities like Babel, which was later called Babylon. Now, the slang term Nimrod, meaning idiot, that's a twist of pop culture. It actually came from Bugs Bunny. In the 1940s, Bugs sarcastically called Elmer Fudd Nimrod, referencing the biblical hunter, but people probably just didn't get the joke, especially me as a child. They just assumed it was a diss and started using it to mean someone foolish. So yes, Nimrod being tied to Babylon's downfall makes sense biblically, but the insult came from cartoons. Go figure. All right, so let's get into our reflection prompts. In Genesis, what stands out to you about God's covenant with Noah? Do you live as though God's promises are stable and secure, or do you assume they're fragile and conditional? Where have you seen rainbows in your life, signs of mercy, and new beginnings after hardship? Human worth. How do you respond to God's declaration that human life is sacred and made in His image? Jesus calling the disciples. What does it say to you that Jesus chose ordinary, working-class people to carry out His mission? Also, what does Jesus calling the disciples so simply, "Follow me," say about obedience and trust? How do you respond when God calls you to something new or unknown? Spiritual authority. Jesus healed and taught with power. What kind of healing or guidance are you seeking in your life right now? Resting in peace. David found peace in the middle of distress. What's robbing you of peace lately? How can you hand it over to God? Listening to wisdom. What's one area where you've been ignoring godly wisdom? What's one change you could make to respond? Journal prompts. Signs of promise. Write about a time you felt like you received a promise or sign from God. What was happening in your life and how did it change you? A call to follow. Imagine Jesus is calling you like He did Peter and Andrew. What would you be leaving behind? What would you gain? Peace over panic. Reflect on a moment when you felt anxious but turned to God. What did you learn about trust and peace? Some actions for the day. Practice trust. Set a timer for 5 minutes and sit quietly with God. Breathe deeply and reflect on where you need to trust Him more fully. Help someone listen to wisdom. Think of someone younger or less experienced in your life. Find one small, kind way to share a piece of wisdom or encouragement with them today. Let go of one burden. Identify one fear or worry you've been holding on to. Say a prayer and consciously release it to God. Key verse to dwell on. In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, will keep me safe. Psalm 4:8. Thanks for spending a little time with me today on What's in the Bible, a first-timer's journey. Whether you're here every day or just jumping in when you can, I'm grateful we're walking through this together. There's a lot to process, and I know I won't get all the answers right away. But that's kind of the point, isn't it? We keep showing up, asking questions, and little by little, we get closer to God. Remember, every journey starts with a single step. See you tomorrow for the next one.